Since its release a few weeks ago, Squid Game has gone on to become one of the most popular shows in the history of Netflix. And with the way things ended, there's no doubt that fans can't wait to get their hand on season 2. What role does the recruiter really play in the games? Is Jun-ho still alive? And who's running the games now that Il-nam is dead? Well, stay tuned to find out. What does that ending scene tell us about the games? After forming loving friendships and using their head to survive the 5 games put before him, Jin-ho finds himself playing the final game against his longtime friend, Cho Sang-woo. And since the challenging question is none other than the Squid Game, which the two used to play together back when they were kids, there was never any doubt that things were about to get bloody. And that's exactly what we see, with Jin-hun finally prevailing over Sang-woo, but choosing instead to vote to end the game so that they both can survive. But in a shocking twist, Sang-woo redeems himself by taking the knife he's had at his side and sticking it in his neck, ensuring that Jin-hun walks away as the winner. After being dropped off in the real world and handed a golden bank card, Jin-hun finds that he has been given the life-changing amount of money that was promised to him just after the end of Game 1. But after discovering that his mother is dead and seeing the devastation in Sang-woo's mother's eyes, he can't help but feel guilty for surviving. Fast forward a full year later and we see that Jin-hun hasn't touched the prize money, is now living the life of a homeless man in Seoul. While sitting on the beach one day, he's handed a mysterious letter from the so-called founder of the games asking for a meeting. And when he finally arrives, he's shocked to see Il-nam, his best friend from the games, lying in a hospital bed at the end of a dark room. As it turns out, Il-nam was behind the deadly tournament all along. Having grown tired of betting on humans, he wanted to feel what it felt like to play. But before Jin-hun can get any answers from him, Il-nam passes on, taking the secret of the games to the grave with him. Revitalized by the meeting, Jin-hun decides to finally use the prize money to do some good. He goes to the orphanage where Sae-byok's brother has been waiting for him, and after organizing for the little boy to stay with Sang-woo's mother, leaves them with a case full of money. He then decides to shave off that silly beard and dye his hair red, showing just how much his confidence has grown after learning that there is still some good left in the world. But this doesn't change the fact that there's still bad waiting around every corner. In fact, Jin-hun has another run-in with the same recruiter who gave him the information for the games in the first place, this time snatching the card from a willing player and refusing to allow him to take part. Now, just a few seconds from boarding a plane to America to visit his beloved daughter, Jin-hun decides to call the number, telling the person on the other side that he will be coming for them. Finally, the call's transferred to the front man, who informed Jin-hun that he should board the plane or suffer the consequences. He knew what he was getting into from the start after all, and should thus have no trouble moving on with his life. But Jin-hun disagrees, but a courageous man who wants nothing more to bring to the end of the games, our hero turns from the entrance of the plane, heading off in the direction of the newest installment of the deadly tournament. And with a second season almost guaranteed, there are a couple of burning questions fans desperately need answers to. So let's take a look at a few of them. But what role does a recruiter really play in the games? And who's running the games now that Il-nam is dead? Don't go anywhere, because we're diving into it right now. Number 1, what role does a recruiter really play in the games? First of all, fans want to know more about that mysterious recruiter that Jin-hun bumped into both the first and last episodes of the season. Since he's played by one of the most famous Korean actors in the history of television, Gong-yoo, we know that the showrunners are likely to give him a bigger role when the series continues in the future. We also know that he has to be an important considering how he's one of the only faces that stay uniform throughout the various iterations of the games. As of right now, it's only the front man and him that the 2021 and 2022 version of the games have in common. We also know that he has some impressive skills winning childlike games against potential contestants in an effort to wear them down and recruit them to the deadly tournament. But it's not just his potential that fans have been asking about. There is also a pretty prominent theory about how he's not only the recruits players, but the guards of the games as well. You see, the childlike game that Jin-hyun and he play in the first episode involves the throwing of an envelope down on another with the intention of flipping it over. But before this game can even start, Jin-hyun has to choose between a red and blue envelope. He ends up choosing the blue one, and when the game is over, the recruiter hands him the infamous Squid Game card to set things into motion. But what if he had chosen the red envelope instead? While some viewers believe that the guards of the games are in the same position as the players, which would make sense considering how easily the frontman offs them after they break the rules. So it's more than possible that Jin-hyun actually chose his role as a player by deciding on the blue envelope, with the red envelope signifying the position of a guard. Since we know very little about where the hooded henchman came from in the first place, this remains a possibility, and a burning question we just can't wait to be answered in the upcoming season. Number 2, is Jun-ho still alive? Something else that fans have been wondering about is the life and times of Jun-ho, the sole police officer who infiltrated the games and caused more than a few moments of grief for the frontman. Remember, the whole point in Jun-ho sneaking into the games was to track down his missing brother, and as it turned out, his brother was none other than the frontman himself, who after winning a previous edition of the games, ended up working for the organization in charge of setting them up. This twist is revealed after Jun-ho escapes the custody of the villainous squad and ends up cornered on a cliff. When the frontman finally reveals his identity, Jun-ho can't believe his eyes, and after refusing to come in quietly, his brother executes him on the spot. But unlike the other important deaths in Squid Game, we don't see the body of Jun-ho, making us think that the showrunners may be bringing him back for the upcoming season. He was shot in the shoulder after all, and could have survived the fall from the cliff if there weren't any rocks below. That being said, we have no idea what type of role he would be playing in the second season. Will he be teaming up with Jin-hyun? This would make sense since this was Jin-hyun who first brought the games to his attention. Either way, we'll have to see what the show has in store for us. But it goes without saying that fans want their favorite police officer back. Number 3, who's running the games now that Il-nam is dead? The second ending reveal that Il-nam was behind everything took the majority of us by surprise. He was a lovable character that Jin-hyun really came to like after all, but before Il-nam was able to answer all of Jin-hyun's questions, he passed on to the afterlife, leaving the games without a creator and calling his continuation into question. Later we see the recruiter again though and learn that the games are actually continuing as normal, bringing our final question to the fore. Who on earth is running this new edition of the games, and why is the death of Il-nam not brought things to an end? Well, we know that the frontman did his best to pick up the slack left behind by Il-nam when he decided to participate in the games himself, so the most obvious choice for a new creator would probably be him. That being said, we still know very little about how he came to the position of frontman. Was this because of boredom after winning the previous edition of the games, or is there something more sinister behind it all? But I guess we'll have to wait and see. What do you think of the ending of Squid Game though? What are your answers to the burning questions that fans still have?